Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to Living the Gospel of Life. I'm your host, Leticia Velasquez, and as always, we'll start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Mary, bright dawn of the new world, Mother of the living, to you do we entrust the cause of life. Look down, O Mother, upon the vast numbers of babies not allowed to be born, of the poor whose lives are made difficult, of men and women who are victims of brutal violence, of the elderly and sick killed by indifference or misguided mercy. Grant that all who believe in your Son may proclaim the gospel of life with honesty and love to the people of our time. Obtain for them that grace to accept the gospel as a gift ever new, the joy of celebrating it with gratitude throughout their lives, and the courage to bear witness to it resolutely, in order to build, together with all people of goodwill, the civilization of truth and love, to the praise and glory of God, the Creator and Lover of life. Amen. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'm honored to present to you one of the greatest, as far as I'm concerned, apostles of the Gospel of Life. She lives it with her life every day and has been a very powerful witness, Lisa Hendey. Lisa is a best-selling author, founder of CatholicMom.com, frequent contributor to EWTN and Catholic TV. She's written The Grace of Yes, and her latest book, God's Story. I Am God's Storyteller. Welcome aboard, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Lisa, I wanted to add that you and I are honored to share. We're both presenting at Light in a Darkened World, which is the 9th annual Norwich Women's Conference, which will be held at Mercy High School in Middletown, Connecticut. That's right in the middle of Connecticut. That's next month. I'm honored to be one of the minor speakers on a workshop on the pro-life choice, All Life is Sacred. And what is your theme? I guess Light in a Darkened World, right, Lisa?
Yeah, so I'll actually be giving 2 talks there, and it's really exciting because, well, let me say, first of all, I don't think any speaker is a minor speaker, so
very kind.
So correct yourself there. My keynote will be on the topic saying yes to grace. And then in my afternoon sessions, which I'm going to be repeating twice, I'm actually taking on the topic special needs in our world today, and I'll be talking about sort of practical ways that we can sort of be part of giving life and embracing the dignity of every human life in our own homes, and doing that in ways that kind of reach out around the world.
Wow, I was wondering who was going to give that workshop, Lisa. I wish I could sit in on it, but I may be presenting at the same time. But I'll certainly get a recording, because as the mom of a special needs child, I'm always looking for new ways to get my daughter included in the Catholic community. She's very limited verbally, and behaviors are interesting sometimes, so that can present its own set of challenges. But my local parish is doing a pretty good job, and I'm very happy. So I look forward to running into you at least at the conference. So I really would like my listeners to know how you got started, as you said to me earlier, in your kitchen. And, all of us have a kitchen, yeah. And we don't really imagine reaching out to the world, but now in the days of internet, everything's possible. So how did you get started, and how long ago was that?
It was way back. I want to say, first of all, that I'm so grateful to be on your show, and you and I have been friends for a very long time. While we don't see each other in person very often.
No, we live on opposite coasts.
Yeah, we've been. So I'm really excited to be with you in person. But we've been at work together in this mission territory of the internet. And for me, that started in the year 2000.
2000.
I had attended a parent preparation meeting for my son Eric's first communion. You go off to those meetings where the religion teacher tells you all the things that will happen when your child receives the sacrament. And, long story short is that I realized that evening that I needed to do a lot more than I was doing in the kind of guardianship of our domestic church at home. My husband, Greg, who is absolutely wonderful, was not Catholic at that time. He since has joined the church, but back then, our kids' sacramental prep was really squarely on me. So I kind of went looking around for resources online. And in those days, it was like, get on Yahoo, because Google wasn't even in existence yet back then.
Oh, wow.
And And I just Yahooed for Catholic mom and to see what I could find, and I just couldn't find anything. And so for some reason the next day I was just so determined that I would learn about this. And so I went and purchased the domain name CatholicMom.com, and I bought some of those dummies for HTML, like coding books, and I decided I'm going to start a website. And I knew that
you wrote your own website then. You actually wrote the code.
So
wow.
I mean, which is kind of hilarious because I teased that I knew basically at that point I could dial up on AOL and check my email, and I could make
we were all doing that.
a greeting card on my computer, and that was about the extent of
yeah, that's where I started.
But I didn't start the website to say I know everything about this. I started it because I was sure that there were people like me who, you know, really wanted to grow in their faith. And this was around the time that the Pope John Paul II was calling us, you know, to be a part of the new evangelization. And I didn't really even understand what that meant. I'd been a lifelong Catholic and had gone all the way through Catholic school, but this, you know, responsibility of sharing the faith with my kids just really challenged me in a new way. So I think I thought that it would be like, you know, learning to knit or, you know, taking a class at the local community college, that it would be a hobby that lasted 6 months and then I would move along to my next thing.
If only
God
you
had
had
different plans.
Yourself. Jet setting all over the world with the gospel. That's amazing, because you call yourself a missionary, and you are. You've been to Africa? Where else have you been?
Oh, I'm so blessed. You know, I love travel, so I love any chance to go anywhere. But I've been to Asia, to the Philippines, to India, to Africa, 3 countries in Africa: Rwanda, Tanzania, and Kenya. South America, to Colombia, to see the work of the church down there. And most recently this summer in Australia, which people might not necessarily think of as mission territory, but the church there is in a real struggle. And so I had the chance to go over there and speak for 2 weeks and to learn a lot about you know, what's happening in the church over there. So it's been just an amazing journey.
That's beautiful, and it all started in your kitchen. I like to think of the United States as mission territory, and that many of the former mission countries like Africa and Asia are sending beautiful on-fire priests and nuns to us and lay people to encourage us in our faith. I know Obianuju Ekiochi is one of my favorite pro-life missionaries. I believe she's from Nigeria, and she's wonderful. I follow her on Twitter and Facebook, and she encourages me in my pro-life walk. So I think a lot of the seeds that were planted by previous generations are coming to bear fruit and helping us as well. But so you're reaching out to the whole world through a ministry, CatholicMom.com, which launched you, but then you went on your own in many ways, right? You're starting new ventures.
Well, so a few years ago, so, you know, Catholic Mom, the work of Catholic Mom early on started including other contributors. You were there for many years sharing your writings, Letitia.
Yes, I was.
And so the team at Catholic Mom continued to grow, and you know, well over 100 contributors writing daily at the website. And at the same time, my personal writing and my speaking continued to grow, and so did my kids. And as I grew older, I just was really discerning, like, what is the future for the website? So I, in prayer, made the decision that it was time for CatholicMom.com to have better, more kind of, I'll say, more long-range plans for a legacy for the website. And a great blessing happened in 2016 when the website well, actually, it started in 2017 and happened in 2017, but the website was actually acquired by Holy Cross Family Ministries, which is a worldwide ministry started by Venerable Patrick Peyton.
Right, the Rosary
Family Prayer and right, exactly.
The family that prays together stays together. Yeah, that's a wonderful ministry out in Hollywood, right?
Well, actually based in Massachusetts, and
no
we
kidding.
have an outlet out here in Hollywood at Family Theater Productions.
Right,
but their headquarters are in Massachusetts, and
no way.
And so they took over running of the website. They hired my good friend, who's an amazing woman. You should have her on your show if you already haven't, Danielle.
Yeah, I will.
to run the website and created a team of people. And so now I'm basically kind of remaining on board as a contributor, but our team, Danielle and our team run the day-to-day functions of the site, and it is a full-fledged portion of Holy Cross Family Ministries now, which provides not only an enduring nonprofit status, but also just a beautiful legacy of Father Peyton's work. And I really believe that the Holy Spirit and our Blessed Mother had a beautiful plan for that, because there could not be a better home for CatholicMom.com. And that's kind of freed me up now to go out and to do more speaking and take on more writing assignments and stuff. So, yeah, the blessing continues.
Wonderful. What a great legacy. So then you started writing more and more books. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your writing?
Well, so my writing actually started, my first book came out quite a long time ago, almost 10 years ago, The Handbook for Catholic Moms, and that's with my publisher, Ave Maria Press, who's been just like an amazing partner to me in my work. But I've done several books with them, nonfiction work, primarily for women. My kind of transitional book was called The Grace of Yes, and that's a book that's really all about kind of how we emulate Mary's fiat with our own yes to God. And then a little bit later on, I had a great chance to begin doing some children's writing, and I wrote a fiction series for children called the Time Traveler series, which is all about a brother and sister, twins, who travel in time and encounter different Catholic saints. And then most recently, I just did my first picture book, I Am God's Storyteller. So I seem to be regressing age-wise, but I'll say that writing for children is actually more challenging than writing for grown-ups.
No, I've taken in the Catholic Writers Conferences that we go to Catholic Media meeting every year. I took a writing workshop on children's books. I thought I had a great idea, and I learned how much work. It's like poetry. Every word counts. You're the wording has to be very precise and concise to be able to reach children. You'll lose them with too many words.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no tougher critic than a kiddo. So
I read a different book to my daughter every night, and the wrong books get thrown across the room. So there you go. None of yours.
Yeah.
So we'll have to try your book. But she makes her editorial opinion known, my daughter Christina.
Well, that's it. And so that's why, honestly, I think, well, first of all, it's a great blessing to have the chance to write for children. But also, one of the things that I do now, Letitia, is go out pretty regularly to schools and parishes and speak with children and really, try to let them know that they are so greatly needed by the church right now, that they have a voice, that they have gifts that are needed by the church. And that's really the main message of I Am God's Storytellers, to kind of empower our kids in a way that teaches them, not that you're going to be preaching the gospel when you grow up, but that we need you to do it right now, and that God's giving you the gifts that you need to do that right now. So it's been, and I learned so much from the children when I go out, and I've talked all the way from 3-year-olds to high school students now about these topics, and just having a chance to dialogue with them is such a great gift for me in my own prayer life.
Oh, yeah. I've been a catechist for a few years, and I always was so edified by my conversations with children. I had a very challenging classes because I'm bilingual Spanish, so I would have First Communion classes, which would include from age 6 and 7 all the way through teenagers, because some kids, because of immigration or different standards in their countries, wouldn't be in the class until they were quite old. So I had to capture a very diverse audience, and it was a really interesting challenge, and it's improving my storytelling. So I know, and I always learn from them. They're very good with feedback. And stories were always the most effective. And as you know, our Lord was the supreme storyteller. Our Lord told most of his doctrine in stories, correct, in parables. we call them parables.
Right, absolutely. And, it's one of the things that we try to do in I Am God's Storytellers, to kind of trace the line of biblical storytelling. The fact that, the Bible begins with this beautiful story of Adam and Eve and the story of creation, and goes from there into, storytellers of the Old Testament and the New Testament. And, kind of for us, realizing that we're part of this legacy, that we have great, profound truth to share, but that can be done in ways, that are simple and exciting and fun and interesting, and certainly Jesus did that. And so I think, you can, read a kid 3 pages of the catechism, or you can tell them a parable and, watch Actually, you can do the same thing with a grown-up and watch, which is more edifying.
You can watch your eyes glaze over when you're talking doctrine. But if you illustrate it in the story, I remember in 4th grade, I was a 4th grader in the 70s. My mother was a very good catechist, and she had us write a parable in today's language. So I wrote The Good Hippie. Remember, hippies were sort of, at least New York, they were sort of on the fringe. I don't know about California. They might have been more popular. But they were considered a little bit questionable. And so the good hippie instead of the good Samaritan. And he was the one that saved the person beaten on the side of the road. And so that really brought that parable alive. Another parable my mother brought to life for us was, we didn't have videos in those days. We did slideshows of the, what was the one, the owner of the vineyard asked, the parable of the 2 sons. He asked his 2 sons to do work. One says yes enthusiastically and does nothing, and the other one says no and goes and does the work. My mother translated it to a mother who asked 2 sons to mow the lawn. And guess who mowed the lawn? But, it was great because she brought in all the parents, offered food, of course, and showed the slideshow with the different, kids in the class, and they never forgot it. And not only that, but it was very concrete for them, that, they could relate to mowing the lawn, but not dressing a vineyard, right? A few of us, at least here, have vineyards. So I'll never forget the time that she made stories come alive, and maybe that woke up the storyteller in me.
Well, I think that we each have that, and, one of the things that I try to express to children, and actually adults too, when I talk in an adult context about storytelling, is that, some of us do that with our words. We, you and I write and we speak, but a lot of people do it through music or dance or, through photography or drawing. One thing that I express to the kids is even a great video game can have a story in it. And so, we're each given different abilities. We know that from 1 Corinthians, that, God's given each of us different, as members of the body of Christ, that we each have different gifts to share the good news. And it's the bringing together of all of those gifts. And, I think our society is hungry for story too. If you look at the popularity of a format like Instagram, which, everybody is sharing their stories, this is what we're doing. And so to harness the power of story, to share what we love most, which is God, just makes sense to me. And, and sometimes that's done overtly through sharing of religious imagery, but I just love finding everyday stories and the examples of people being loving and kind, living the call to the gospel, and sharing those too. So.
Yeah, they speak very powerfully, and you'll often find those stories going viral, where somebody went above and beyond to help somebody in need. And I get frustrated sometimes trying to watch TV and find a dearth of storytelling on TV. They're sort of telling the same stories over and over, and there's a need for the kind of stories that Christians tell. You're right, of kindness and love, because TV and movie industry tend to be very dark. It's always about somebody's decline and somebody's giving into evil. And while, there are Catholic writers, Flannery O'Connor comes to mind, who love to talk about the dark side of human nature, she did so from a Catholic perspective in terms of, this is evil, not embracing the evil for its own sake. Sometimes I get a little frustrated with that. I spoke to our Hollywood producer, Larry Thompson, who had written a very inspiring screenplay. Actually, he produced it, Amish Grace. I don't know if you were able to see it. But it was a Lifetime Movie Network, which I'm not a big fan of usually. But this one was the story of the Amish girls who were attacked in their schoolhouse, and some of them were killed, and the parents forgave the attacker who killed himself, and they went to the attacker's funeral, and they tried to form a relationship with his widow and his children, and it was the most moving, very sad, but very moving story. Was made into a tremendous success, I think, partially to the Catholic audience. So he said to me, we need more stories like this, more inspiring stories.
True.
And he's a former altar boy, so he knew of what he spoke. He just needed a little help finding those stories. So I said, well, I will go and look for them because I know they're out there.
That's actually one of the great ironies of my life right now. While I've lived and traveled all over the world, I find myself now living in Los Angeles, and as a part of being a writer, a Catholic writer out here, one of the interesting things, we moved here about 2.5 years ago, and one of the things that I spend my time doing now is actually doing movie reviews, and not Catholic, of Catholic movies, but of kind of mainstream movies from a Catholic perspective. There's a community of us out here who do this, who see each other regularly at junkets for these films, and it's kind of a different mission territory because you're out there to kind of bring, to understand what a movie is about, but at the same time we're interacting with the cast and the crew of the film, the actors who are making the film, the writers, the directors and producers. And, it's always an opportunity every time I go out to one of these interviews to introduce myself, as a Catholic writer. Automatically the air in the room changes, when you ask your question covering, saying, well, I'm Lisa and I'm writing for CatholicMom.com, like right away it's like, okay, you can get ready for the Catholic joke to come. Or,
oh, really?
Yeah, or you'll hear, as I often do now, I grew up Catholic or whatever. So it's just, in the same way that these people, most of them aren't, being overtly religious in their work, but often their work is flavored by their own experience of faith. And sometimes that's very positive. And frankly, sometimes it's not positive. And that's a chance to kind of go, and just walk alongside them and try to give them some encouragement about, the real state of the church, because there's just so much negativity out there now. So I kind of laugh that God has me doing this right now, because it's just not something that I'm well equipped for, but it's, it seems to be on my plate a lot these days.
It was briefly on my plate a few years ago, Lisa, through Catholic Exchange. I was doing more reviews, and I was invited to a junket for Prince Caspian because on the DVD release, they were looking to involve more Christians, because they hadn't been enthusiastic about the movie. Some people felt that it departed a little bit from C.S. Lewis's book more than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So actually that was courted as a Catholic writer. That's not to say that there weren't a few eyebrows raised when I got into the hotel. But my friend William Mosley, very warm and very approachable, and very glad to find somebody in a writer that, I guess I remember him his mom. He was a boy from the countryside in England that kind of got snatched out of obscurity for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And he loved Hollywood, but I think he also was a little bit out of his element, at least in those days. And he was grateful to find somebody that maybe came from a similar faith background as his. And he actually took the picture that became the header from my blog, Catholic Media Review. But, there were a few eyebrows raised when I first got in the room. Here comes the mom, the Catholic mom. But that movie, was something where they were trying to reach out to a Catholic audience. And I think after the Passion of the Christ, they realized, hey, there's movie viewers in that population. Who knew? 17% of the country are Catholic. Maybe they want to go see a movie that encourages their faith. Maybe not overtly, but certainly an uplifting storyline. And the theme of redemption. And there's one thing that one of the Catholic, he wasn't Catholic, he was Episcopal, but one of the people involved in filmmaking told me is that Catholicism is uniquely suited for Hollywood. And that's a confusing line. What do you mean? He says, well, Catholicism is a sacramental religion, and you understand the power of symbolism and visuals and activities in expressing your faith, where Protestantism is more focused on the word, and it'll be hard to find Christian words in most movies, but you may see images of the Holy Spirit, fire and wind, baptism and water, even crucifixion and passion and suffering and redemption. in movies where you least expect it. Have you ever seen that, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Unexpectedly.
Yeah. And
maybe even unbeknownst to the writers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm really learning a lot about this topic from the Daughters of St. Paul. We are so blessed to have a Pauline Books and Media store just about 2 miles from my house, and there are two sisters, Sister Rose and Sister Nancy, who are very, very active on the film scene. You'll find them, covering a lot of new films, and then it's really, I'm learning a lot from watching them in this respect, and it's kind of interesting, especially Sister Rose, that you'll hear her talk about films, and she doesn't necessarily want to cover kind of the overtly kind of sticky sweet films.
No.
She's often covering the mainstream films that have challenging elements in them, and trying to see from a media missionary perspective, what are those themes, and how do we convey those. And I think as parents, you always have the responsibility to protect your children from evil imagery, but also when they become a certain age, to help them discern, what they're going to view, and how it, through the prism of faith, how that even something that's not an overtly religious message can encourage them to live out the gospel call. So
that's right.
For me, it's a learning process, but it's something I'm really enjoying.
Well, I'm glad you're engaged. For example, I found the movie El Torino very inspiring. It was very hard to watch, a lot of violence in the movie, but the idea of sacrificial love. I didn't expect to see it. It was a tough movie. But some Catholic reviewer had reminded me of the man who sacrifices his life for another, the old Irishman, I believe he was Irish, who sacrificed his life for the Southeast Asian young man who's succumbing to the gangs. It was really moving, and I said, I didn't expect that. That was not what I would have seen coming. And maybe not a movie I would have seen, but as an adult who can discern that this is very helpful. Don't just give up on the world. There are good things to be found in there. And there's things that you can look at with a jaundiced eye and say, this isn't a good message. I may be enjoying this film, but I have to remember that, the message is not a good one.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I think involves a good amount of kind of personal introspection and prayer. And I'm really keenly aware of what images I put into my body. A few years back, in 2014, when I had the chance to travel to Rwanda with Catholic Relief Services, I went over there to study on a journalism fellowship to study the 20th anniversary of the genocide. And then we were visiting, some places that filled my heart and soul with some pretty dark
I can imagine.
Images, but reality. And then afterwards, I struggled quite a lot with almost like I hate to call it a PTSD, that belittles what our veterans suffer, but a little bit of a trauma afterwards. And I consulted with a priest about it at a certain point, because I was really just kind of like months and months of nightmares and bad stuff. And, he helped me. First of all, he gave me an anointing of the sick, which was very helpful. And then he helped me to realize that, we have to be really careful about those images that we consume, and that whether it's real world interactions or, something that we read or something that we view, that, we have to be properly disposed to get the grace out of those things and to protect ourselves from the things that could do harm to us. So I'm pretty cautious.
Oh, wow. And I understand that is something we have to watch for in the world, but not of. It doesn't mean that we consume everything that's in the world. Certainly, Dr. James Dodson shared that he had been on President Reagan's Commission on Pornography, and there's images that he can't erase. I heard that years ago, and I remembered that. He was doing it as a psychologist, but however, he still saw things which maybe weren't such a great idea to see, and he admitted that. So, and
that's the case. I mean, so what this priest told me was, when you went to XYZ place, you went there with an earnest heart, thinking that you were going to go and learn from that experience and write about it and share it with others. But the way that your your heart is wired. You process information a particular way. And also, I think that one thing that he helps me to understand, and this is going to sound a little bit like the church lady on Saturday Night Live, but, that those of us who make it our work to go out and share the love of Christ with other people, there are dark forces around us that don't want that to happen. And so we have to be really protective of anything that could lead us into, a battle that we're not equipped to handle. And so that's why, I think especially if I'm going to go out and cover something that's challenging, I'm always, I have St. Michael the Archangel on speed dial.
Good for you. Absolutely.
And it's the same thing, Letitia, I'll say even something as simple as, you and I are getting ready to participate in this conference. I know that there will be some warfare the week of the women's conference, that There will be, bad weather and travel and technological difficulties and things that happen. And so it's kind of actually helpful to know, when these things happen, God has a mission for you. And if you're doing your mission for the right reason, I really believe that he won't let you be deterred. So when bad things happen now like that, I just kind of realize, okay, this is happening for a reason. Don't freak out. Pray. Try to stay calm. Deal with the circumstances that you've been dealt. So there.
Very, very good advice for someone who just went through almost 2 hours of technical difficulties to get this interview up and running.
Well, let me just tell you that I'm not surprised.
Well, I'm glad it's happened before because, I have everything all together, and then this site that we use to record the shows wouldn't come up on my computer. Yeah. And God sent my husband home for lunch. I'm lucky that he comes home for lunch. He happens to be that techie. He does it for a living, and he was able to fix whatever it was. I still don't know what was wrong. I thought I had everything all together. But we're like, ultimately, we depend on our Lord and the grace of God and his protection. So I was sharing with you that in addition to being involved with this radio show, I'm involved in a pregnancy center. And I would never go in to my pregnancy center. It's only 11 miles away, but I pray a rosary on the way for protection. I ask for a lady's protection. And not only that, to be able to open the hearts of the women that are in crisis and are seeking help. Because it is God's work. We're just acting as his hands in the world. But it's definitely his work. We never need to lose sight of that, because without that, the attacks are pretty furious. Especially in the pro-life movement, there's a lot of attacks because look at what we're doing. I mean, the numbers are amazing. Abortion has gone down to half of what it was in the 80s and 90s, and that's due to faithful Christians and Catholics, I believe, that are, putting their faith in action. They're on the media, they're in the legislature, and they're on the ground with the women in crisis, and they're showing God's love. And it's amazing to see a woman who has been hurt, to see her open to Christ through us. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. It's as beautiful as raising your children in the faith. That's the only thing I can compare it to, or the love of marriage. These are all gifts to us from God, but we have to protect them. We can't take them for granted. So we have to say in the sacraments, we have to go to frequent confession, right, Lisa? Fasting helps enormously.
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
On Wednesday. I fasted like I was supposed to, and maybe not as well as I was supposed to, but just anything that you give the Lord, he gives back to you in spades. And all these things that I've been trying to have happen in the pregnancy center all came together. The sign, we just had our sign put in yesterday. We have almost 2 feet of snow, so you can imagine that was a challenge. And ice everywhere. Unusual for March in New England. Usually it's a little bit nicer. And we got it up. And now our place is open for business. But that all came together on Ash Wednesday while I was fasting and praying. And so I know the power of fasting. I'm going to try it again today. I'm going to try and do some periodic fasting. I'm diabetic, so I have to watch it. But I can, can find ways to cut back. And certainly sweets are out for Lent. But see, just ways to put my focus on God rather than food. And this kind of spiritual strength will bolster whatever it is that you're doing, right, Lisa?
Oh, absolutely. I was reminded while you were talking of a quote that I saw recently. I won't share it perfectly, but it was from Fulton Sheen, who's just awesome. And it said something like, God doesn't use dirty tools. You mentioned the sacrament of reconciliation. And certainly I think for myself, one of the most important things of, especially going out and speaking is to be well disposed, to be kind of a vessel of what God plans to do through you. And that sounds holier than it is. I recognize every time I have the opportunity to go out and speak that, I've been given that opportunity to serve for a reason. It's not because of my great piety or the fact that I'm like the perfect Catholic, because I'm definitely not. But when God uses us, whether it's, in front of a group or even one-to-one with a person that we love in our own life, we're a vessel of the Holy Spirit at that point. And so we've got to really just surrender ourselves to the way that God's using us. And it's really easy to get in our head in those moments. Like I would imagine that there's some trepidation in opening the center of all the things that could go wrong, and perhaps the ways that you're not quite ready for that work that you're being called to do. But God, with God, the work that's meant to be done will be done. And it's our job to cooperate.
I agree.
With that. So.
I agree. Mother Angelica described a lot of what she did. She said, holiness is 1 foot in the air, 1 foot on the ground, and a pit in your stomach. And that's how she advanced from selling peanuts and fishing lures in a cloistered convent in Alabama, or starting in Ohio, down to Alabama, to a worldwide media network, which includes radio, internet, books, newspapers, TV, in how many languages? And it's all by saying, like you said, the grace of yes, saying yes to God, even when she's like, I don't know how he's going to pull it off. But he's God. So he can do a pregnancy center through an imperfect person who, like you said, is trying to cleanse herself through the sacrament of reconciliation, frequent prayer, communion whenever I can get there. I go once a week, but I try and sneak a few masses during the week when I'm free. And just offer that's okay, God. You probably went through 15 people before me who were more qualified, and they all said no. So now you're stuck with me, okay? I'll do what I can, and you have to do the rest. And that's all he needs is the yes.
Yeah,
so, if everyone listening to us would just say yes, we could change the world.
I really think like one of the themes that I do when I go out and talk with the kids is this idea that I am a saint in the making, and so like for example, I was with a group of second graders recently that are getting ready to make their first communion, and we were talking about what are some of the ways that God's calling you as a second grader to be a saint, and if you ask them, they can express to you like, oh, I should be kind to the child who's being bullied in my class, or I should, be respectful of my parents, or I should pray for my grandma who's sick in the hospital, or I should even something like taking care of my dog, caring for creation. Yep. They can express the little ways that God calls them to be a saint in the making. And I think it's the same thing for us, that we think, oh, well, I have to be like Letitia, or I have to be like Lisa, or whatever. I have to be like XYZ person that I think is so holy. God's calling us right where we are. And if you look at the doctors of the church, I love St. Therese of Lisieux, and then, her little way that this cloistered 23-year-old nun could become a doctor of the church and the patroness of the missions. She never went into mission territory, but that's, her role now. So our mission territory is often very small. And it might feel sometimes that, oh, I wish I could go to XYZ place and do whatever. But, my job is taking care of the 3 little kids under my roof, or caring for an elderly relative, or, being a single person and being, of encouragement to families around me. We're meant to be used right where we are. So, yeah.
That's right, and in God's perspective, it's not ours. And Therese said if pick up, was it Mother Teresa or the Saint Teresa said pick up a pen for the love of God, or it's not what you do, it's how much love you put in the doing. And who's to say what action of love is big or small in God's eyes? I think when we get to the kingdom of heaven, my mother always taught us this. We'd line up for CCD class to leave, and then she would reverse the line. The first shall be last and last shall be first, to remind us, don't push and shove to get to the front, because sometimes the guy at the end is the one who ends up on top. So to remember that hidden person who's helping her elderly mother and no one notices might be the greatest in the kingdom of God, and because of the great love she has, as Therese was in her cloister. And there's probably many Thereses in their cloisters that don't write an autobiography, and we won't know them until heaven. The great work that they've done, especially praying for people like us, Lisa, who have an outlet to speak or write or travel. I always ask for suffering people and for cloistered religious to pray for me, to be my powerhouse and to be my spiritual support, so that whatever grace of God comes through me is received, and that I don't impede it on its way out. I don't, like you said, I stay as close to God as I'm able to, and not get in his way as he does his work. So it's Mother Teresa always had a co-worker, she called them, where for each sister there would be somebody who was suffering that would specifically pray for them. And then they also prayed, I believe, hours in front of the Blessed Sacrament for their work. So they would see Jesus in the people they were ministering to. That's something that you and I do too, I'm sure, is soak in Jesus so that we can radiate him later.
Yeah, absolutely. Last weekend I happened to be in this place called Conception, Missouri. There's a beautiful abbey there that I was giving a retreat there. And one of the great gifts of the weekend was to go over to a convent for the Benedictine Sisters of the Perpetual Adoration. And these are sisters who they have, among other things, if you live anywhere near Missouri, you should definitely check this out. But they have a relic chapel with over 1,000 relics, and you can pray with those relics. But talking with one of the sisters, it was really interesting. She was a late vocation, and even I think close to 40 when she entered the order. A woman who had been in the first graduating class of women at West Point.
Wow.
And who had then gone on to serve in the military and then to work on Wall Street.
Wow.
And of all things, then became a religious sister. And she was talking about how, the sisters are really our partners in the ministry that we do, that, sometimes, we forget that there are people just round the clock praying for us. And yes. When they pray the Liturgy of the Hours, that they do that for all the people that don't have anyone to pray for them. So if you're somebody out there who's feeling like I'm at the end of my rope and I'm discouraged and, what's going to become of me, just know that you're not alone, that there are women like that sister that I met who are lifting you up day and night to encourage you in your walk. That
How
we
beautiful.
Don't walk
and you can write them. A lot of times you can write them and ask for prayers if you'd like to write them.
Yeah,
you can find their sites on the internet, and they will have a contact us link, and you can click on that, and I've done that, and ask for prayers. But they are praying for you whether or not you ask for it. Our Lord knows your needs and brings it to them, I'm sure. But it feels good to hear someone say, I'm praying for you. I find on Facebook an amazing outreach. I had a relative have cancer surgery yesterday. Hundreds of people are praying for that person, and it's so consoling. When my daughter lost her dog last week, again, outpouring was unbelievable, and I'm so blessed. So the internet can be such a good influence if there's a good Catholic presence.
And I would say, I know whenever I'm on Catholic radio that there are a lot of people who might be at the other end of the spectrum in terms of life, and that maybe you're in your home more and, you listen to Catholic radio and you aren't out and about as much, that we need you to be our prayer warriors. Like these women, last weekend at my retreat, I met a woman who was in her 80s, and I always love talking with these women, because when you ask a room full of women, do you have enough time to pray? Most of them will not raise their hands, but this woman raised her hand very high. And I said, will you please pray for me and what I'm doing, because, I need you. And I know that she's going to be faithful to that request. And maybe you're somebody out there who now, you spend most of the time at home. Please know that you are a major force for good in our world, and that your prayers are so important. that your prayers for all of the causes, the pro-life cause, for all those out there, for our priests as they struggle, just, for the state of our church. We need you.
Absolutely. I think those people are keeping the church and the world from turning in on itself, because sometimes it seems we're headed in very dangerous directions. But those are the people whose prayers are keeping the grace of God from keeping us from hurting ourselves, really. We do such foolish things. And without them, I think only in the next life will we realize their value. I somewhat realize it now, and I do appreciate them very, very much. I try to be one of them as much as I remember to pray throughout the day. I have, scheduled prayers that I pray. I try and pray the rosary every day. I try and read my daily readings, a big difficult, but I'd like to do more. So when I can add a mass or adoration, I can. But, a mother with children, it's harder. My daughter's special needs, she requires a lot of therapies. But I even try and make use of the waiting rooms and the drives, to offer prayers or praise. I love to sing along with the praise music. My daughter's not too crazy about my voice. But that's okay. She tells me to cut it out. She's a teenager. She's a critic. What can I say? But at least I'm silently singing then when she's in the car, and trying to, or listening to wonderful, serious Catholic, XM. So you can at all times be offering something to God, regardless of how busy your hands are, or if you're driving or whatever. So there's basically, we're trying to wear down all the excuses, right, Lisa, for not getting involved in doing good for God and the world, and for not and for putting down what it is that you do. Whether it's folding laundry or emptying the dishwasher, everything can be done as St. Therese of Alice said, love among the pots and pans, right? Finding God in the kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
Service.
Absolutely.
And in changing that diaper and getting up in the middle of the night with a sick child, just remember to offer it. Just try and remember to offer it to God either before or after. God will understand if you didn't think of it at the time. And remember how important being part of the communion of saints is. So we're all called to be saints. No one is excluded. You just have to want it. And you have to say, God, give me a way to be a saint. Boy, oh boy, does he give you the challenges, doesn't he, Lisa? It's scary. It's really scary, but it's the most worthwhile thing you'll ever do.
It is, and it's one of the great blessings of, being in the Lenten season, that we kind of look around us and see those needs. And maybe, by the time you listen to this, maybe you've already come to be a little discouraged in your journey. And I just say, too often with me in Lent, I sort of get a few days in and think, oh, well, I don't really need to give up. Start to kind of compromise on my chosen Lenten fast or whatever. But it's not too late every day to recommit ourselves to this stuff, to realize that when we fall, that we have to get back up and try again.
That's what makes a saint, Lisa, is getting back up, because you'll never advance if you don't get back up. If you just say, that's it, I quit, I'm a failure.
I'll try again next year.
Yep. Now, who's a greater failure than St. Paul? I mean, he was persecuting Christians, and the Lord gave him a second chance. And he struggled, and he struggled, and he struggled. And all lives of the saints, you'll see, they all had something to struggle with. So just because you've sinned and you continue to fail, that doesn't make you unselectable. That's exactly who God is looking for. Just be willing to say, okay, Lord, I blew it. Let's start again. And that's the most important. You won't get anywhere in anything, right? Whether it's athletics, writing, music, if you're not willing to start again, and to sort of accept your failure and be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. I think today's International Day of Women, March 8th, and I think our greatest fault, if I may speak for all women, is that we are hard on ourselves. And we put ourselves down, either saying that we're failures or what we do isn't important, we don't matter, we're not, and this is society's fault. We're not pretty enough, slim enough, rich enough, our hair isn't good enough. You can add to that, right? Our nails aren't pretty enough. The commercial industry has done a good job of telling women, you need to do all this to be accepted. But in Christ, his amazing love for us, he loves us just where we are and invites us to grow, and he doesn't talk to us like that. If you hear that sort of talk in your head, that's not Jesus talking to you.
Yeah, that's not of him. I think that's one of the great gifts of having kind of traveled around the world to places that are very impoverished, that I often go to those places and, I think I'm going there to help them. And it never fails that I walk away realizing, wow, I was the one who was helped. But, a few things about being in places where women in particular don't have a lot of money and education, I recognize the gift of kind of interior beauty in women, particularly elderly women in these countries where elders are really revered because, a long lifespan is not as natural a thing. And then the other thing is just the gift of hospitality, that somebody who, has nothing will welcome you into their shack of a house and, put a cup of water and a small plate of food in front of you, not from something they have extra, but from their own dinner, and feed you, and not worry about all the things that, if I'm going to have somebody over to my house, I'm thinking, okay, what is the decoration like? And I'm looking up 10 recipes, and, and then I just don't do it because I get afraid of, having people over. And I realized, wow, that an open heart, an open home is often where we meet people who need, who aren't going to necessarily walk into a church, but who need somebody to hear them and walk beside them back to the faith.
That's true. I'm blessed with in-laws from Latin America, and I pop in on them. I can pop in on them. They don't mind. And whatever's on the stove, they will definitely share it. Might have been their lunch, but they will share it with warm heart, and you always feel welcome. And they don't seem to be particularly bothered, like you said, by the decor and the recipe. And we were very hard on ourselves. There seems to be an openness there, and a love that I really have learned a lot from. And I did the 2000 census in a very wealthy part of Long Island in the Hamptons, and it wasn't the people who had a lot to offer that were the most hospitable. It was those people who were living over the garage, had very little, who offered me a drink or something to eat, or, I wasn't staying for dinner, but they would have had me stay for dinner. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful lesson for me almost 20 years ago now of who is really rich, who is rich in God's eyes.
And I think that's one of the kind of things for me about, we use social media to share the good news, but it's also, I think, a danger that we can look around ourselves, even at people in the church, and see the way that we're portrayed, in a venue like Twitter, Instagram, or whatever, and think, oh, well, XYZ person is so perfect, her life is so together, and her children are always dressed beautifully for Mass, and, whatever. And then we can, come down on ourselves, and that's not that's not
that's where all these psychologists are saying these things are dangerous, because who's going to show the day that your family looks like a wreck and you look like a wreck and you go to Mass? No one's going to show that. They're going to wait for the 1 in 20 times that everyone has their act together. And just remember, you're seeing everyone's best. I don't know anybody who's willing to show you, their dust bunnies on the floor and the spills that get sticky on the carpet that they haven't had a chance to clean up. A couple of times I've been tempted to show a before and after cleanup of a room, but I'm so embarrassed by the before. I never show the after. So remember, you're seeing everybody's best. Everyone's in their Sunday best and looking great. So remember that. Try and remember that anyway. I know I have difficulty with that. I don't post a lot of personal things very often because of that. I sort of feel, well, they're going to expect that I'm like that all the time, and I'm certainly not. With a special needs child, with running a pregnancy center and a radio show, the house suffers. And sometimes the outfits do and the hair. So when I'm not on TV, you should see my hairdo right now. I'm grateful this isn't TV. So I'm very grateful that you are coming to spend time with us, Lisa, and your wonderful, beautiful apostolate that you have, reaching out to so many different people all over the world. Give us some of your contact information, your websites. I will post them on my show page, Living the Gospel of Life, on Facebook. But if you would like to share some of your websites and your books so that people can learn more about you.
Sure. Well, you can find me at lisahendey.com. My last name is HENDEY.com. And I'm on social media pretty much everywhere at Lisa Hendey. I love any social media platform, so come and find me in those places. And
okay, so you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook?
Yeah, at Lisa Hendey.
Okay.
And I want to invite everybody to come to CatholicMom.com. Even if you're not a mom, we have something for everyone there. We a few of the highlights there include our daily gospel reflections. These are written by people all over the world, and they're just a reflection on exactly what it is, the daily gospel. So if you want to start your day in prayer. And then we also have our Sunday gospel activities, and these are free activities for your family or your parish or your class to download and use. Coloring pages, puzzles, all kinds of resources for you. They're being used literally around the world, free for you. And something new every
wonderful.
Day. Yeah, CatholicMom.com.
Well, that's fantastic for catechists, homeschoolers, moms with their own kids on Sundays that want to bring a little extra special touch of Lent. I know as a homeschooling mom, former homeschooling mom myself, and technically I'm still a homeschooling mom, bringing the liturgical seasons into everyday life was a great way to make the faith come alive for the kids. One reason I always admired the Jewish faith is so much of the Jewish faith is expressed by the mother in the home with the Sabbath and the bread and the candles and the prayers. And of course, Passover, which is coming up. Catholics have that as part of their heritage, and they also have, the beautiful grace of Lent and Holy Week. There's so many beautiful ceremonies in Holy Week and Easter. And I started with Maria von Trapp's Around the Year with the Von Trapp family, which I understand is now in print again. But Catholic Mom has resources which may be better adapted to an American home. We'll see. So thank you so much for all these resources. We're always, as moms are always looking for ways to make the faith come alive in our kids. Thank you so much for coming to Connecticut, far across the country, to share your gifts with us. And I will do my best to share on social media so we get a nice full crowd there.
Thank you. I can't wait to be there.
It'll be awesome. And I'll give a little plug for that conference. Hopefully, this will be out before then. It's on Saturday, April 6th from 8:15 to 3:30 at Mercy High School in Middletown, Connecticut, smack in the middle of the state on the Connecticut River. It's co-sponsored by the Office of Faith Events in the Norwich Diocesan Council of Catholic Women. So it's a women's conference, although I understand priests will be there, obviously, for Mass and confession. And Lisa Hendey is our keynote speaker, and I will be doing the workshop, The Pro-Life Choice, All Life is Sacred. And I'm going to be doing similar things as I do in my show, giving you ideas of how to be involved with the pro-life movement, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a millennial who's out in the working world. So thank you so much for joining us on Living the Gospel of Life, Lisa. God bless you with a beautiful Lent and a blessed Easter.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.